This is a presentation. It's a tips and tricks lunch and learn. So it's not a training session, but hopefully you'll be able to pick up on some tips or things about management reporting you're not aware of. Just make notes of it, and hopefully you can, after the session, go and try them. And then we're going to have some other options to be able to learn more about it in the future. So thank you for joining our session today that's being conducted by David Hobbs and myself, Jim McGann. I'll be assisting him. The Management Reporter is just, I thought I'd take a moment just to share that Management Reporter is licensing that every Great Plains user has. But as opposed to Great Plains licensing, which is limited to a certain number of users based on what you've purchased, Management Reporter licensing has, as noted here in the top right-hand side of this little layout, is unlimited. So if you only have 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 users using Management Reporter, and you'd like to open it up in the future to allow different department managers to be able to get Management Reporter reports and view and such, you absolutely have the option to do that, and there's no additional licensing that you would have to get budget for in order to take advantage of that. We'll go into the Management Reporter environment. Just one last thing about the presentation. Based on some feedback, we did retailer this presentation to first show some, let's call it, advanced features about Management Reporter along with the basics, but then we're going to have 2 other parts to it. The second part's going to be going over some of the basic information about Management Reporter, and then we'll get into a little more advanced features of Management Reporter. So David, I think I've done my part. I'll hand it over to you now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. On your desktop or in your list of programs, you'll have an icon for Report Designer. Once you launch Report Designer, you'll be in this screen that looks like this. This is Management Reporter. Okay. Now, what we'll do first, I'm going to show you how to run a report and do some various little tips and tricks, and then we can come back and drill down a little bit. So this pane here shows you your active report. Now I'm going to close this and show you where I launched that from. So when you first launch Report Designer, you may see this pane here, which is blank. But if you click on Report Definitions, you'll see all your report definitions here. You may have multiple folders, so you can expand those folders. Now, I have a report here called Summary Trial Balance Default. I'll double click that, and then you can see that I've now populated this area here. I have a row called Trial Balance Tests, and I have a column. So what Management Reporter does is it uses these rows, account rows, to pull data directly from Dynamics GP. So it would be pulling data directly from SQL or DataMart or those data areas. So once I have my trial balance on the screen here, I can then set different parameters, like what base period do I want? Maybe I want February, maybe I want March. Which base year do I want? Well, I'm in 2020, so I might want to run February financials for 2020. So once I have my basic information populated, and we have a lot of sample data here, so I'm meant to be using 2024. So sorry, so let me correct that. So once I have my period and base year populated, I can then just simply generate the report, and I'm going to do that for you now. So I need a base period, a base year, At a very minimum, I need a row and a column. And now I'll generate. And if you see the generate button here, this is what I'm clicking on. So we'll generate. You'll see that my report queue status is visible, and you can see that the report is queuing. And it shows me all previous reports for the past 7 days. If you don't want to see that, you can toggle that off with this checkbox here. But any errors or anything that come up at this point, you would see on the screen. Now this is we have 2 different viewers. This is generating to the what we call the web viewer. You can see that this is a web page, right? This is Internet Explorer. So we have the web viewer, which is this viewer, and we also have the management reporter viewer. So I'll do this twice so that you can see both viewers. Now, everything that you can do in the management reporter viewer, you can do here. There's a couple of things you can't do that we'll see. You can't drill down to dynamics from this viewer, but you can drill down into, from summary to a greater level of detail. So you can see the pointer here changes to the little finger pointer there, so I can drill down again, and it'll show me a detail for that account. Also from this viewer, you can export to Excel via this download button here. You can print. So there's various things that you can do from this viewer. So this is an example of the web viewer. So let's minimize that now, and let's go back and generate this report again. Under tools on the top bar here, the menu bar, which is a traditional type drop-down menu. If you click on tools and go to options, you'll see that we have an option here, use management reporter viewer as default. So I'll click this, and then I'll click OK, and then I'll generate the report again. So let's do that so you can see this again and see the queue again.
David, one of the questions, there was a question of when you use the browser, does it only go to Internet Explorer browser? You can use any browser, correct, with the browser version of Management Reporter?
That's a great question. I know the default is Internet Explorer. And I don't use the browser, the web viewer as a general rule. I use the management reporter viewer. But that's an excellent question. So yeah, we can certainly check that.
Yeah, we'll follow up with you.
I'd be glad to check that for you.
Sure. And one thing about, why are there 2 viewers? There's always been the management reporter viewer ever since this product was purchased by actually Great Plains, who then Microsoft bought Great Plains 20 years ago. The IE browser only came about maybe about 7, 8 years ago, David. Is that right? It was an add-on in the last decade sometime.
Yeah, last few years, yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the questions that's come up over the years, well, why have they added it? And what's the answer? We don't know, do we? There's no particular, value we've seen from the browser. It's just a preference. You definitely could send data to Excel from both these windows, right?
Right, definitely. And so once the report launches, let me show you that if this is too small, you can go under View, and you can do Zoom. So you can make that a little larger if you'd like to. And on different monitors, that might be a good idea depending on the resolution of your monitor. But now I'm in the Management Reporter viewer, and you can see that I can double click again and drill down. Now here's my account. I'll click again and drill down again. Okay. Now if I drill down one more time, this is unique because I have, let me back up. And if you can see, I do have a back button here. So you can click back. Excuse me, sorry. Let me turn that off. Sorry. Let me drill down on this one here. So see this current, this is current, this is year to date. I'll drill down on my current column. We saw this last week. This is a drill down into the actual detail of the entry. Could be a journal entry, could be a sales entry, could be a payables invoice or check, but I can get additional account detail. So for example, you can see that I have the reference, I have the source, which came from General Ledger. This was a General Ledger source number here from when it was posted. And this was the originating customer ID. So we'll back up and we'll show you how to add this detail. So let me click back now. Again, go back to my front screen. So there's different levels, as you can see, there's different levels of detail. And you can see that I have different sales accounts here. Once I drill into the second level, you can see something very interesting happens here. You see this Dynamics icon here? Well, now it lights up and it tells me that I can drill into Dynamics. Let me double click here again. And you can see now I can drill into Dynamics. So let's do that. Once I drill to Dynamics, open the icon here and you can see my detail inquiry window. So it drilled me to the account and it populated that journal entry number with that sales amount. And if I hit show details here, you can see this was the audit trail code. This is the General Ledger source code when it was posted. Came from a sales journal source document. And then of course, if you know GP, you can continue to drill down from there.
So David, you can go right back to the invoice in that case, right? Because the source document was an invoice. So this gives you the ability right from your report, which is not available in any other reporting system in GP, to be able to drill back to the source document in your Great Plains screen. Correct?
Correct. And let's click on this this account here. My icon is still active, so I'll drill to Dynamics again. And you can see it populated this entry. Again, if I show details, I can see more about each entry. And then I can drill back. This is the detailed journal entry right here. And then I can drill back again to that source document. Okay. So that's an example how you can start at a very high level and then drill down into these entries as you need to.
Now, David, can you drill back to Great Plains on every one of the Management Reporter screens? Or is there only certain screens that permit you to do that?
Right. It's the second level here. So if I click back again, you can see now I also have forward. But if I click back to this top level, you can see that I can't drill from here. I need to be in that second level.
And that's because the Dynamics button is not illuminated, right? It's shaded out on the first level. Is it shaded out on the third level also?
Right, and the reason is that it knows there's multiple accounts here, so I need to go to that second level, and then I can pick the account that I want to drill into, and then it's highlighted. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. If you go to the third level, can you do that?
Yeah, and now if I drill again to the third level, no, it's just giving me that. Well, no, there it is on the total. Yeah, so if I click on the total for that account, I can drill from that third level also.
Very good.
Now let's drill again to the detail. This would be well, there's no detail there, so I would need to go back to a different account. Let's use this one. This is the current. I'll explain this in a minute. But if I drill down here and then click here at this level, I can drill back. Okay. So try that when you get a chance. That's a pretty nice little trick there. Now let's go back to our. I'll close these screens so I can click the X here and get back to my report designer. So this is my designer screen, okay? And I want to show you where the level of detail comes from. There's a couple of places. Here's the detail level, and this allowed me to drill from the very summary level down to the account level, and then down to the transaction level. So I can do this, and I can drill to financial and account. This would be the very top summary level. But if I want to get the level of detail that I have on the report, I want to use financial, account, and transaction. And then in my column definition, I'll click on the column icon, and let's design the column. So in the column design, if I want the very low level of detail, which has the transaction source, originating vendor name, that level of detail, I need a current column, or what in Management Reporter we call a periodic column. I think in FRX, I think it was called current, but now it's current is periodic. So you have a financial dimension, and then you have the current column. And if I have this, then I can add additional attributes, which are the detail for source document, vendor name, customer name, those things.
David?
Now we can see, go ahead.
So out of the box, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no attributes added to any of the columns in Management Reporter.
No.
That needs to be added by the individual,
default,
right?
Yeah. Generally, so the default is financial.
Right, so if no one's seen it to date, it's because they've never added it to their column report. So please proceed.
Right. So let's add an attribute here. So if we click in this blank column, column I, if I double click, you'll see all the possibilities that I have, financial dimension, description, different things. I'm looking for attribute because I know that's where my detail settings are. So right below attribute, I'll double click again. These are all of the details that I have available. Transaction description, master record ID, which we saw in the report, but I'll add master name. So I want the number and the name. So this is the number, and this is the name. If I hover over some of these, you can see that I had audit trail code, I had master record ID, I had originating document number.
So David?
Which could.
So Normally, Management Reporter will only pull data from the General Ledger module in Great Plains Dynamics GP. Correct?
Well, this is all coming from General Ledger, right? So because when you post in Dynamics GP, there's certain information that all goes to the detail file. Where did this journal entry come from? It came from General Ledger. It came from a payables or receivable source. They also attach to that the master ID, which could be the vendor number, customer number, employee number. So all of this is General Ledger. Okay.
Right. So this is sitting in the General Ledger detail module, right? But normally when one does an inquiry using Great Plains views, they don't see all that information. They can only see a limited amount of information that's in there.
Yeah, in the basic views, yes. Smart List,
right?
This information is available in Smart List. Smart Views, Smart List, right.
Right, but if they're looking at the typical trial balances from within GP or inquiries, they normally don't see that. So you're showing that this is one of two ways that they can actually get this additional information, this being in Management Reporter, correct?
Yeah, and so this is one way to get it. So there are other ways, but this is one way. This is the way we do it in Management Reporter. It's a convenience tip or trick that you can get it on the trial balance or the balance sheet or P&L, whichever type of report you're designing. But this is just a little trick so that if you need that level of detail, you can get it. Now, the trick is if you want to use attributes, you need to have a periodic or current column. So I have a current column and I have a year-to-date column. Now, let's save that. We were in the column definition. Now we'll use the same base period and year, and let's generate the report again because I made a change to the column.
So while we're waiting, David, let's open it up. So if anyone has any questions so far, please unmute your phone and please ask. And if you have a question, probably someone else on the call has that same question. So please feel free to do so.
David, this is Anne Marie. I have a question on drilling down to Dynamics.
Okay.
So my current report is set up with financial, account, and transaction. However, when I just tried to run it, I don't see the option of Dynamics. Is there something else that you had to do on the home page to be able to see that option?
Well, no. Let's do it again. So on this report here, because I have a current on Dynamics. Sorry, I drill down to the second level, and then once I do that, I can see my accounts here. So if I highlight that account, so drill down into your second level, highlight one of your account amounts, and then you should see the active Dynamics drill to Dynamics.
Okay, and this has to be in the Management Reporter viewer?
Yes, because you can't drill to Dynamics from the web viewer.
Okay.
That's about the only thing you can't do, okay?
Okay. So I do, okay, so I was able to do that. Oh, I see. I think it's just set up differently on my screen. Okay, so I have to go to the second level. Okay. Thank you. I will try that.
Now, in this example here, I have my periodic and year-to-date. So I highlight my year-to-date, and I want to drill down. And then we can see that we added the originating master name. In this case, we know this is a customer name. Could be a vendor, could be an employee. But in this case, we added the originating master ID and originating master name. So if you ever see this in SmartList or Management Reporter, these are the originating master ID and master name. Okay. So now let's back up a level. And I want to show you a nice little trick here. If you were here last week, I had a long row, but now I've shortened up this row to have just some sales accounts. So I might have a row which has sales or assets or expenses. And I want to right click here in this area. And I want to select a column. So I might have multiple columns here, but in this case, I'm selecting year-to-date sales. So I'll do select column. Once I do select column, I can then see up here in the top bar that I have different charts available. And if I click pie chart, for example, I can then see all of my sales color-coded and broken out. And I think you can see that U.S. sales then makes it my greatest sale amount. These are saved with the report.
So David, if that's a cool report, we want to save that and send it to someone. How do we do that?
You can copy this report. If I do right click, I believe I can right click and copy that.
Well, I mean, if you can you save it with this report? Can you?
Yes, it is. It is saved. Yes, it is saved with the report. Yes, and I can pin that to the right side of the screen, which once I do that, it'll stay with this report. And also I would see my comments that I can save with the report too, which is the next step I want to show you. But for example, if I right click again here and I were to select a row, I can select a row and do a chart. And in this case, if you would, ideally you'd have multiple columns for this row, so it wouldn't make a lot of sense, but you know, I might do a bar chart or something.
So David, let's
doesn't make sense, but
let's say that you know on that U.S. sales that you have to send this over to this pain in the neck manager named Jim McCann, and you know he's going to ask a question about that particular value on that line. Like why'd you spend lunch? Why was your lunch $109.95 or whatever it may be? Well, is there anything you could do to accommodate such a nuisance of a boss?
Yeah. So in the comments, so I can highlight a particular row or amount, and I can click comment, and I can say this was a company lunch. You can click OK, and then those comments are stored with the report. So they're stored with this version of the report. If I need to copy those forward, I can copy those forward to other reports. You could have your boss then pull up this report in Report Viewer, or you could send him a link to the report wherever he would go to see his published reports is then where he could pull this up.
So David, maybe I missed something. You said this is saved with the report. Where did you save it?
So once I pin it over here into the comment area, it's basically saved with the report. So if I close out, and let's go ahead and do that. So now I'm back to my screen here, right? Now, next thing I wanted to show you was I don't need to generate this report again. So if I'm generating a new report, I click this icon. But what if I simply want to see the most recent version of the report? There's an icon right here to the left. It's called generated, and you can see it's generated on. So this is the generated icon. So I simply click this icon. It launches the report I just looked at. And if I click, I should see my charts here, and there they are. Okay, so I had to expand this drop down here. So try that when you get a chance. But all of your comments and charts are stored with the report. And when it launches those, they're simply minimized, right? And you can open those up by clicking here. So those are stored with the report. Now, let me show you one more thing. This is the designer. Now, everyone doesn't use the designer. Some people would use the report viewer, correct? So if I do report viewer, some people can use the report viewer, which they are not designers. So we open the viewer. I then see the report that I just generated. And so people would go to their location where they know the reports are. Say your boss, Jim, and you can double click on that report and then launch that report in the viewer. And you can see, again, your comments and charts are stored with the report.
So David, you mentioned the concept of a viewer versus a designer. Can you just elaborate on that a little? Who would be a designer and who would be a viewer?
So an administrator or a staff accountant that needs to create new reports, those would be examples of designers, right? Now, managers, say maybe store managers, department heads, those they don't design reports, but they want to certainly view reports. So those would be example of viewers.
So can a viewer generate the date range that they want to see a report?
No, they are viewing the report that we've generated for them.
Right. So this would be twofold, I think. One would be so that the accounting department does their work. Now the report's available for department managers or management, and they then provision those reports out into the viewer, and then they notify the users that they can go and view their reports, correct?
Correct. And then whether you're in the designer or the viewer, once you're into the report library, right? This is where you can create additional folders. So each person can have their own folder. Maybe store managers, each store manager might have their own folder. You can set permissions to that folder so no one else can see it. So only the person that the report is meant for can see the report. These reports can be grouped together, so you can group together several P&L reports, and they can all generate to that same folder. For the store manager, you can schedule these reports to run at any time. They could run at midnight tonight. Tomorrow morning, they're sitting there for the store manager.
And David, the second advantage of a viewer is that if you have a manager like myself, you want to keep me out of messing with the reports, right? So a viewer can't change anything or ruin the reports once they've been created by a designer. So the designer would typically be the users in the accounting department that are actually responsible to run the reports, check the reports, make changes to the reports, not only just create the reports, correct?
Right. Design the reports, set up groups, permissions, schedules. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And like you said, if we have 8 departments or 8 managers that need to see their own reports, this could be set up so that automatically when you say generate reports, it generates 8 copies of the reports, because you haven't talked about the tree at all. You only talked about the row and the column, right? So we have multiple companies or divisions within a company, and we only want certain information to be sent to, let's say, someone responsible for a company. That's where we use the tree structure. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct. So you would use the tree to separate out departments or companies, and so that's how you can separate out that information into different sections of the report.
And as you said, whether it's a company or whether it's divisions within a company, that gives us the control to do that and to automate that, right?
Right.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
So, David, we just took another 15 minutes of everyone's time. I'm sure there may be at least another question out there that someone might be having.
Let's open it up to a question. If anybody has a question about comments or charts or drill down or anything like that, and then we'll hit just maybe a couple more topics.
Yes, so David, while we're waiting for a question, what I'll do is I'll just show along the top. You went into tools before to be able to change under options which are the browsers that we're using, right, from here.
Right.
But we also have under tools, as we showed on the session. You keep saying last week, it was actually 2 weeks ago. See, time flies for you, David. You don't know, have concept of whatever weeks or weeks, right? Weeks on. But there's under tools, there's something called a report wizard, which if you are a designer and you're responsible to create reports, you could use this as a way of being able to create a new report. And they do give you an option to do so for either a balance sheet, a trial balance, or one of 3 different types of income statements. These income statement reports are all the same. They just have different columns. So when David talks about columns, you can have different columns for current month and year to date, like we were just taking a look at. Or you can have rolling quarters. You can have rolling months. You can have actual versus budgets, because obviously you can track budgets within your system. So if we wanted to create a report using this wizard, again, we come in through our Tools section, go down to Report Wizard, choose what type of report we want to create, and then we say Next. We normally always use actuals if we want to have it, unless we're relating to budgets. So we say the trial balance, Next. Is it for one company or multiple companies? One company. Now, since it's a trial balance, it's not going to ask us for a range of accounts for the different reports. So here it just asks us for a name and a description. And as you see here through the little wizard, will be completed. If I go back and I choose an income statement or a balance sheet, let's say I want to do a schedule. I choose an income statement. I go to Next. This is where it prompts me, okay, what data do I want to appear on the report, Jim? And it's broken down to different sections since it knows it's an income statement. Is it revenue? Is it cost of revenue? Let's say it's not cost of revenue. Let's say it's operating expenses. Then it allows me to come over here and identify which of these accounts are going to be listed on that report. So I can come down to where the operating expenses are. And I can either pick one account and insert it in to report, or I can highlight an account, hold the Shift key down, and highlight multiple accounts here if I want to have those as part of my report. Once I identified accounts, I can break it down to these different categories. I can then proceed, and it'll show me what this report looks like. If I continue on this wizard, go to Preview Report, I can identify is it for one company or many, and then I can give it a name and what period we want to run it for. Since they didn't have any questions for you, David, I'm not as good a trainer. I'm sure they have questions for me. So any questions about that? Get under reports, report wizard. And then once you create that report and you save it, now you'll have a new report that's defined under your reports definitions. And then you can add it to a report definition by coming over here and choosing that particular report, giving it a different name, put different columns, and you're off to the races.
Okay, great. So a couple of more tips on the left-hand side here. You can have multiple folders. It's really easy to create a folder. Jim's reports could go into a folder called Jim's reports. That's where he can put his reports. But you can not only do that under report definitions, you can do that under row definitions. So if you want to keep your rows and columns and reports and trees organized, especially if you're making changes for like 2018, 2019, 2020, you have a lot of changes, right, with GL accounts. So it's a good idea to, if you have a lot of changes to accounts, organize them into years or something like that.
So David, a question about that concept. So if I'm working in Management Reporter, but I have another 2 team members in my accounting department working on it, do we all see everyone else's work?
Yes, the designers would have access to all of the different rows and columns, right?
So I may want to create a folder just for my work versus someone else's work, right? Yeah, thank you.
Right, yeah. And so play with the folders and see how you might want to organize data. So, for example, if I had a report here, summary trial balance default, I can right click on this and I can do move, and I can move this to Jim's reports, right? Something like that. So we could do that. So try that and see how that works for you. Oh, one more tip that I want to show you designers is that if you have a report, right, and it's working perfectly, and you want to use that as a base to start another report, click on File and then Save As and give it a new name. So that you don't corrupt your original report. And then what you can do is, let's see if we can find that report here. And that was a summary trial balance Jim. So I can move that to Jim's reports, right? Okay. Now also do that with your rows and columns, do that. I did it with the report definition, but if you have a favorite row or column that you don't want corrupted, do File, Save As, make a copy of it, give it a new name, and then use that for your new version of your report. So that's under File and Save As. Okay. Now, we saw the row that I used for this example. No, this was not the row I wanted to use. Sorry.
So David, as a timekeeper, we got a few minutes left. So Does anyone on the call have a question about something maybe we didn't show, such as how do you send these reports to Excel, or let's see, is there?
Well, let's look at our generated report using the generated icon. Pulls back up the previously generated report. Once we have the report populated, we can click Excel, send that to Excel. You can, there's a checkbox here, open workbook after exporting. I always check that. Click OK, and that will launch Excel for us. If you have multiple departments or divisions, those would be separate tabs at the bottom of the report. Okay. So that's an example of how you export to Excel. Okay, do we have any more time, Jim, or this is the row that I use?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Ermine, Jim. Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, Ermine.
Yeah, regarding the pie graph that you've created, to Jim's point, if I wanted to send that graph, the pie graph out to my manager, how would I do that?
Right, so let's go back to the report. I think this is the right one. Now you can send a link to the report, but let's look at this. If you right click here and do copy, then you could go into, like Word, and you should be able to do paste. Now, you could try to paste that into an email. Jim, if you want to try that, you can. But just right click on it and copy.
Okay.
Yeah, so try that. And
Great.
these will stay with the report. The comments will stay with the report. With the comments, remember you can copy those to additional versions of the report. Once you're in the report library, all of these versions are date stamped and time stamped. So we don't replace the name of the report. Each version is there. So each generation of the report is there in the report library.
Great.
Thanks, Ermine. Any other questions?
Thank you.
David, was there something else you wanted to show at this point, or?
There was one more thing. This is the row that we use today in today's example. Okay, you can see it's populated the names and the accounts. I wanted to show you how to do that. So if we click on rows, I'm in row definitions now. You can see the title here, row definitions. This is active for any area that I'm in. So I'll click a new and do new row definition. Here's my blank definition. Click on edit and click on add insert rows from dimensions. So I use this all the time for various rows, whether it's a complete trial balance maybe or just a schedule. Once you do that, you'll see your account. This is your major account, like cash or sales or whatever. These are, if you're familiar with FRX, these are the hooks or ampersands that tell us what accounts we're going to pull. So in the start range, I do my first account. This is the major account code. And I do my last account. It will auto number the rows. Just click OK. And we discuss this more in the training that we do. But this is how you can build a row and populate it very quickly. Okay, and this is what I did today. The only thing you didn't see me do today was come in and do totals, but you can click here and format code. You can do underlines and totals, and in Management Reporter, if you do a total, it's this is the format that you would do. So in FRX, it was 102 TO 1060. In Management Reporter, you simply do 100:1060. So that's how you can do a total.
So David, you're showing your age, David, because you keep referencing FRX, which hasn't been used in 10 years, but that was the predecessor to Management Reporter that Microsoft created, correct?
You'd be surprised. There are still people using FRX.
The follow-up. So we hope that you've at least learned one or two things from the presentation today. Please practice what you've learned. We also have from David various offerings on how you can learn more, either on a one-on-one or for a company session, or even classes. If you have an individual, you want to be part of a class, we've done classes where for a 2-hour session once a week for 4 weeks, you can learn everything you need to as a beginner, or even get to some advanced features. Or if you're pretty good with it already and you want to be part of an advanced feature class, you can do so. Just contact me if you do have any questions, or email us at support@micro-force.com in order to inquire about that. And I will make available through our customer service director, Christina, this recording in the next week. The last point to make is that as everyone's being displaced in the last 2, 3, 4 weeks to the home offices, you may be aware of this, you may not, but your Great Plains system has a lot of functionality even built into it that can help you in any of these areas. If you want to make electronic payments versus checks, because maybe whoever has to sign the checks is not easy to get to, since we're all in different locations. Setting up approvals, reporting like an audit, scanning invoices, or even having a requisition system to get an approval before you even purchase something are all features within your GP system that myself and my team would be glad to help you with if you had any interest in that. So at that point, this concludes our presentation. If there's any questions, I'll open it up. Otherwise, have a lovely day.